Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am so blessed because I am joined by the beautiful Emma of the Impact. Emma, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am doing very good. And for those of you, if you remember or not, I did a little poll on Instagram a while ago, like, hey, who would you love to see on the show? And I had a couple different people hit me up with Emma, and I got a hold of her, and she was willing, and I am super excited to make this happen for you guys. So, before we start talking about why you're here, Emma, I want to let the people that don't know you get to know you here for a second. Um,
Me?
Emma has been obsessed with film before conception. Her parents met in a movie theater. That is so legit. Do your parents remember what movie they were seeing when they
Okay.
met?
Okay. So the story, I won't tell the whole story, but my dad's no longer with us. He would remember both films, but my mom only remembers one. It was in Boston. It was a double feature. And one of the double features was Bringing Up Baby. And what my dad, and the other one was another comedy of the similar caliber. And what my dad liked, because they didn't go together, they just went like in the afternoon too, like separate people, like, I need to just pass some time. He liked that my mom laughed during times that nobody else was laughing, and he found that charming about her. So, yeah, that's how I started.
That's so rad, man. And film, it's amazing how film. I was blessed. I grew up in a video store. My mom and dad owned a mom and pop video store,
You're
and
trying to make me jealous. You're trying.
That's
I'm
what I
so
was hoping
jealous.
for. I wrote all these
Ah,
things down just so I could talk about them. But yeah, it's just to watch people even at a young age come in and out on dates and stuff like that. Like film just has this amazing way of bringing people together. So, and I'm sorry about your father no longer being with us. My mother is the same way.
quite a
So
while ago. Quite a while
that's
ago, but thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Now obviously with you doing a podcast and stuff, an interview with Tawny Katan really started your like obsession and love of doing interviews and podcasts. So how did you make that happen and how did it bloom from there?
Well, I did TikToks first, and I always had that ambition to get my act together and do a podcast. But I was asked by somebody that I work with as a producer now, still to this day, who asked me, who I didn't know at the time. I had just recently posted a lot of silly videos of me dressed like Chucky. Because I don't have to grow up. I can play dress up and post on the internet if I like. I only live once. Asked me, hey, do you want to join us for a watch party of Witchboard with Tawny Katane? I'm like, of course I do. Oh my goodness. But I hadn't really done anything like that. So for the longest, I prepared a lot of questions. I prepared a lot of knowledge about the movie, about Tawny. And after I did all that, I'm like, maybe I misunderstood. Why would I be asked to talk to Tawny Katane, this video goddess? And I thought maybe they meant I'd just be watching the live, but nope. Then it went live, and we were talking to Tawny Katane, which she was one of my favorites besides Kim Basinger growing up.
Right.
I loved there's certain women growing up that just stick in my mind because of what I used to watch, and she was really lovely, really lovely. And after that, I really just wanted to start talking about film more on a serious level, which I did on TikTok for a while. And I had a couple mutuals, Justine and Crystal, who knew a lot about horror, and they had different atmospheres of horror than I did. So we started a podcast together. It's called the Let Us In Podcast, and we do lives every week, and we record our episodes, and then we put them out on YouTube and on Spotify and such. And it's the most fun. It's getting to talk to your best friends and talk about horror. The internet's a wonderful thing sometimes.
It's amazing because I'm quite a bit older than you, but I
No
remember
way. No way. How?
uh,
No way.
I'm geriatric. Um,
No, 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 no. No, I doubt you're as older than me than you think. How old do you think I am? There's no wrong answers. You could tell me I'm 80 and I won't be offended.
at a guess, I'd say 27.
36.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You hide it well. You age like wine. I age like milk. So I understand. Well, I mean, we're right about the same age then. I am still older than you. But
Did you just call
so-
me geriatric accidentally? Like there was like a little trickery in there.
oh, there
Uh,
was. You're
sorry.
geriatric with me now.
I'm sorry. I forgot to mention I can be a bit I tease people, but I mean it with nothing but love and respect for everyone.
Bring it on. I love it to death. I do it all the time. But with us being the same age, then you'll remember, when we were young, and I'm talking, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish, it wasn't cool to be a horror fan. Like you were really weird. I'm talking like pre-Scream. After Scream, it was really cool. Horror was cool and it was all the rage. But before that, if you were watching horror movies in March, April, May, you were fucking weird. And then we had this beautiful thing come along, the internet, and we're able to communicate our love and our passions with other people that are like-minded. And for as disgusting and vile and putrid as the internet can be, it can have these amazing avenues for people that can get into things with other people that they didn't maybe have in their hometown. I knew very few people in my hometown that were into horror the way I was. If I would have had the internet back then, who knows what could have happened. But it's amazing to be able to do these things and have these podcasts with friends that you're so close with. And on top of being a horror podcaster, working with other amazing people, you're also a documentary film producer. So, I'm going to ask about that because obviously I love film. How did you get into that, and what comes along with the territory of that?
Well, this is my first documentary that I've worked on. It's called Kinder Trauma. We just launched our Kickstarter today. So that's big news. It was part of my fellow producer Blair, who originally asked me, "Hey, you want to hang out with us and Tawny Kitane?" Oh, of course I do. It kind of accumulated through one thing leads to another. Because I'm good at what I do. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really good at what I do. I know a lot of good niches. I have a lot of good ideas. I won't tell you that like if I'm just like walking around in private, but right now I'm feeling good about myself. So
Let's do it.
it's a good thing. It's a good night for it. So when you're a producer, it's just a lot of has to do with being a part of just the whole creative team. A lot of it has to do with scheduling interviews. And luckily, I'm not the producer that has to deal with legal stuff and like adult stuff. I get to do the fun stuff. So, we're very lucky because we have a really good team on that too. Kinder Trauma is, I don't know if you know the original website, which was a cult favorite website, Kinder Trauma. Well, we're working with the original folks that made that website.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
awesome.
so it's what scared you as a kid. So it's not just horror movies. Like
Right.
for me, one of my kinder traumas was sick ET. Like it haunts me to this day. I'm not okay. Uh, so it's a lot of fun. We're doing a lot of interviews. We have some interviews that we have already filmed, like Sandy King Carpenter, Ernest Dickinson, who did Tales from the Hood,
Yeah.
Tales from the Crypt. We've got Dr. Lindsay Demers, who is a professor and doctor at Boston University. We have Brian Usna, Society, Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Josh Rubin, Werewolves Within. He did his first actual film he directed and wrote was Scare Me. He was recently in A Wounded Fawn. We have a lot of other really great people we're scheduling interviews with. So I'm really excited about this project, and I'm excited for people to see it. So
I'll tell you, for me, it was Large Marge, man, from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, that's a big one. That's a good one too. Oh, a lot of people say that one because it is traumatic.
Yeah. The top 3 for me, I think that scared me the most, that if we're going non-horror, obviously, would be Large Marge. That one got me good. The ending of Tim Burton's Batman, when the camera's spinning to the Joker and it's making that laughy box. So
Oh yeah,
that got me. And when Judge Doom reveals himself in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Ooh, that's a big one. We do horror movies too. Is there a horror kinder trauma of yours?
Oh,
a lot of people say The Gate. Oh, House. That's a good one too.
When Anne Elizabeth is hanging at the beginning, that scared the shit out of me as a kid. Every time when the grocery boy walks in and you have the loud noise and she's just hanging there. No, I was like, holy shit. That was my first horror movie. And it's still a movie.
Oh, really? That's a great one. It's a great movie. I love all 5 of them. I do.
You have The Gate, like you were talking about The Gate. There's so many scenes in The Gate, like the glass in the hand, like there's so many different moments in The Gate. You've been naughty, like that's another big. Monster Squad could be one too. Like that's That's a really good concept. I really like that. So the good thing is though, guys, you don't have to go far to find this stuff because all the links are down in the description. So make sure that you are following Emma, make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast, and make sure that you are up to date on all the things that she has working on. So in order to be as involved in horror as you are, Emma, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about how horror started for you, your first horror movie. And Emma, the first horror movie you watched was
King Kong. But when you asked me, of course I have to make it complicado because that is me. Because I feel like the first isn't always the best time. It isn't always the most impactful. So I kind of give you a list of 3 movies, but I'll go with the actual first, which some folks might say that's not really a horror movie, but to me it is. I was 4 years old and my dad was super into film, super big, as they would say then, and some of them still do, monster kids, which if they grew up, the boomer generation, and I don't mean that derogatorily, just that generation grew up. If you were really into horror, even then it was hard to get a hold of famous monsters of filmland, Forrest Ackerman, all that cool stuff. So I was 4 years old and he showed me King Kong on this little TV. And I remember not only is it the first kind of scary movie I ever watched, I remembered it meant so much. I could tell, even at that young, so much to him that I was watching that movie and I'd see him like looking over to see what I would react to certain scenes. So I started with King Kong was my first, and then he showed me all the Universal monsters. So I went from there. And then my grandmother, his mother, showed me all the Hitchcocks. But then there was one that was more personal to me. But
well, trust me, we'll talk about it. But I want to bounce back to something you said a little bit ago, and I dare anybody to give me a very justifiable reason as to why King Kong is not a creature feature horror film. That it's a total horror film. But I'm one of the people that like Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park's a horror film.
Totally agree. We have a whole episode on it on our Let Us In podcast. We talk about it. It's great.
Yeah, and another one that I will go to bat for, and I will fight tooth and nail on the hill. The Terminator is a slasher film. I will say the first Terminator film is a sci-fi slasher all the way. I mean, he wears a mask to cover his identity. He goes through the phone book to kill every single Sarah Connor. Like it's a total slasher to me. But I digress because this is not about me. This is about you, Emma. So
I like that though. I hadn't heard that before. I like it.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, that's a hill that I will die on. Like 100% die on. We know that you watched it with your father, which is another thing that I love to talk about first horror movies. And a big reason for that is, as we learned earlier in the episode, your father's no longer with us. Just like I said, my mother's no longer with us. So when I watch my first horror movie, it takes me back to sitting on that couch, and being with my mother and being with your father. Do you think that these moments, like watching this movie now, do you think that it makes it mean a little bit more to you because of those memories you have of the film?
I definitely think so. I do think there are a lot there. But I don't think it's necessarily that movie necessarily, but we talked about movies a lot. And we had a game that we used to play where we would text each other really cryptic looking, like you can hardly tell what it is from a movie. We'd have to guess the movie or guess the prop from the movie because we knew so much about those films together. So anything that has to do with the Universal monsters, especially the ones that start to get really cheesy, like Curse of the Mummy's Hand, I really think more. It wasn't one of my first, but that was one of my dad's favorites. He also loved old classic films like Marty. I definitely think of my dad. But then there's movies that are newer, they're not. But one movie that made me really think of my dad, even though he had never seen it, was Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler. He wasn't into wrestling. He wasn't a wrestler. But there was something about the story that struck me. It could be the Jersey Shore aspect, but when you love somebody that is into film and you talk to them about film, a lot really resonates even after they're gone. And especially whenever there's a new Tarantino film out, he was a big Tarantino fan. I think our dad would be he didn't get to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And he would have been way more excited for that movie than I was. I was excited, but not as excited as he would have been. So I miss him when I think of that stuff.
I completely understand. My mom was the first person to teach me that horror can be extremely unconventional in the movies that you watch. My mom's the one that instilled to me that Flowers in the Attic is a total horror film. Um,
How
and
did you know I'm a huge VC Andrews fan? I didn't tell you that.
no,
Oh my
but
God, so big. I don't want to digress to that, but do have a question though. Can I
yeah,
ask you a question? Can I turn the tables? What
there you
was
go.
what was one of your mom's favorite horror movies?
Amityville Horror, the
Oh, good
OG
one.
Amityville Horror. That was her first horror movie. That was her favorite horror movie. Um, she really liked, as funny as it sounds, was it Sleepwalkers, the Stephen King film?
The cat one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she
Yeah,
re-
that's a great one. I
yeah,
love that one.
she really liked that one. Nightmare on Elm Street, the OG Nightmare, was a big one for her. And then Child's Play. Like you were talking about Chucky earlier. Child's Play is my favorite horror franchise, like hands down, bar none. As a
It's so
franchise,
fun.
it's my absolute favorite. So Child's Play 2 was another one that she just fuck. My mom loved Child's Play 2, and I think it was the relationship with Andy and Kyle. Like my mom really dug that.
It seems like she
So
liked a lot of family oriented horror in a way.
she
Did
was,
she like
if
The
you knew,
Conjuring or did she not get to see it?
no, she by the time like that to my mom, too scary. Like
Oh,
when it came to
really?
like supernatural stuff, like I said, the only movie my mom, I was lucky. I had access to any movie I wanted all the time. The only movie my mom ever shut off, it was like, nope, too much. You're not watching this, was The Exorcist. My mom was like, no,
Wow.
absolutely not. She did not do the super, like, my mom was very, very religious. She, once it, we started to turn the tables about, Jesus Christ and, Catholicism and stuff like that. No, we're not watching this. It's way too real, way too scary. So that
Wow.
was, that was kind of the line she drew. So anything like The Conjuring, Insidious, there was no way I could have ever got my mom to watch any of those. Not a chance in hell.
So that must have been quite something when you actually did watch The Exorcist.
Blew my mind. I was terrified. That movie scared the shit out of me. I remember as a kid, like when she was the part that got me the most as a kid is obviously, you have like the bed shaking and the head spin and stuff. Like I just remember being young and being like, burn the house down. Who gives a shit? She's gone. Get the fuck
Yeah.
out of there. Like she was
When you're not an
terrifying to
adult,
me.
you're like, like, okay, like she was your daughter, but like not anymore. So let's just like burn the house down. So interestingly enough, when you mention that your mom was thought that's too scary with The Exorcist, there's only one movie. As my dad wasn't into slashers and stuff like that, but he wasn't against me watching stuff like there's only one movie he didn't want me to watch when I was little. And that movie was Grease because she changes for the guy at the end. So she didn't
Mhm.
want me to get like that message that like you should alter who you are for a guy, which is a good message. No, to
It really
not
is.
do that.
It's funny how these little things like that can really stick with us forever. Like it's one of those things that like my mom, she loved Grease,
Oh, I
but
love Grease too, is the odd thing. I love it, but I won't change for a man. But
thank God.
I know, but I love that.
When you have the part where we'll be getting lots of tit. My mom was like, "Oh, whoa, 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 hold on, you're not allowed to listen to this." like as a kid, I remember that. Yeah, when he said, it ain't no shit, we'll be getting lots of tit. I remember my mom would always turn the radio down at that part when we were listening to it in the car. Like,
Is that in the song Grease Lightning?
yep,
Oh, she's a real pussy wagon, Grease Lightning.
yeah.
Yep.
My mom was like, "No." So, bounce back to King Kong here for a second. Obviously, a film that has made such a big impact in cinema, not just horror, but in pop culture. We just got a Godzilla vs. Kong. Like they're still doing things with this monster. Do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most from King Kong?
Definitely. So there's two, because I see it as a romantic horror film.
Mhm.
It's definitely when she first connects with the monster when she's in his hand. Of course, this is the original King Kong. I love me some Jessica Lange, but nothing, no, nothing compares to the original for me personally, not in general. I love Jack Black in the newer one. I love them
Right.
all. So it's that one, and then of course I remember feeling this empty sadness, especially as a child. You watch a lot of movies that star animals, and it just feels so unfair and sad that he's taken away from his home, and then he falls in love in a way, and then he's just misunderstood. It's their fault that he was climbing that building in the first place. And even as a very small child, you just get that it's not fair. You might not get all of the levels of why it's not fair, but you get, that's not fair. That's so sad. And the Universal monsters in general, except for Dracula, he's kind of a douchebag, but always. I mean, I love Dracula, don't get me wrong, but he's not like Frankenstein, where you feel bad for the monster. So I think that a lot of my viewing kind of relates to back to those Universal monster movies, where a lot of them you feel bad for the monster. My favorite one is Bride of Frankenstein, is like the best. I mean, have you ever felt like a kinship to a character? You're like, that character is me. Have you? Who's your character? Who's your character?
The guy I look like, Mr. Tumnus, Chronicles of Narnia. Totally me.
Oh, I have never seen that, so I don't know it. Oh no, but I know I'm going to get to know you though. So it gets the. Mine is Dr. Pretorius from Bride of Frankenstein. Some people will look at a man and say, I can make him better, which they can't. But I look at a man and say, I can make him worse. I don't really mean that, but I do. It's like, Frankie baby, Henry, Dr. Henry Frankenstein, you brought a man back to life. And that is better even than my experiments. And I love myself. That's a lot for me to say. Right. How can you just go to a normal life? Basic, boring. You want to come with me, baby, and create a new life that's even better than the first one. Like I am Dr. Pretorius. I love that character. I love that movie. I love Elsa Lanchester. That's my favorite. It wasn't my first. I obviously saw Frankenstein first, and one of the scenes that affected me the most, which is one of the ones that affect a lot of people. But I was a little girl when I saw him throw the little girl into the water. Even then, as a little girl, I understood, because they made such a point of them throwing the flowers in the water, and then he throws her in the water. He doesn't understand that she's not just going to float back up to the top. And that's a kind of scariness that you don't even know why you're so upset when you're like a 4 or 5 when you see that.
Well, and you're right, because you have this heaviness that comes wrong with, when you have the dad that's walking through the town carrying his little girl.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Frankenstein didn't realize what he was doing. He's a baby. He was just born, and he thought that they were having fun. And so I totally agree. That's a very heavy part in that movie. It's people need to go back and watch the Universal monsters that have never watched them. And I mean, I'm talking, go back and watch your Frankenstein, your Bride of Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man. These movies were so far ahead of their time in practical effects and storylines that, you're killing a kid in Frankenstein. Like, you have all these things that were really taboo at the time that Universal was like, let's do it. Let's run it. Which obviously
that was so a James Whale decision. And Karloff was like a little iffy about it, and then he always regretted it. He's like, I really feel bad. But I think it stays in I'm with James Whale. I'm like, it really made an impact. I mean, everyone was fine. Everyone's gonna be fine.
The girl's fine. She'll be all right.
She'll be all right. Can I tell you a quick little story that's one of my favorite kind of like Universal actors kind of thing? You might already know it, but maybe someone that's watching doesn't. When Boris Karloff had already been like in 60 movies before he was Frankenstein, but not like a big part. And, he had a lot of trouble. He would hide his heritage, but, he had a little bit of darker skin. And even if he told them he was Italian, people were awful back then. They didn't like it. Everybody.
Right.
It's like not very much different now. But anyway, he was, he needed a ride home, and he was just kind of waiting outside the studio lot, and a car stops like, hey, you need a ride. And an actor who was well known at the time was in that car. And it was one of my favorite actors. One of my favorite people that existed within the film industry is Lon Chaney Sr. And Karloff is going, like, he is in his head fanboying, like, just relax, don't blow it. But he asked Lon Chaney Sr., he's like, I'm an actor. Do you have any advice for actors trying to get out there. And what Lon Chaney Sr. told him is find something nobody else wants to do and then do it better than anybody else can. And then he became Frankenstein. I just love that story so much.
That's so great. And who knows, if he wouldn't have been stuck on the lot that night, maybe he wouldn't have gotten that ride home, and maybe we wouldn't have gotten the Frankenstein that we got. You know, the whole butterfly effect thing. So
who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, with these movies, obviously, like I said, and then those birthed the Hammer horror, which gave you the more gothic side of those type of films. But
so many, I know you are a very respectful person, but I am not. I try to only objectify cis white men, but as a pansexual person, so many great boobs in Hammer films. My God, the boobs in those movies. Woo. Oh, that is on display, and it is enjoy. It's part of the joy. The very red blood, the boobs. That's actually a very early incident of gore in film, before Psycho, even in Frankenstein, when his eye comes out. It was just really shocking.
And it's amazing how one thing can lead to another, and you get these amazing films. And like with King Kong, it's obviously been an ever expanding franchise. Which one of the King Kongs, if you can sit down and you can only watch one King Kong film, what's the film that you're choosing?
Not easily the first, because I have personal attachment to it, and I haven't seen them all. As much as that was my first horror movie, I haven't seen Kong versus Godzilla. I kind of love the charm of the older kaiju than I do the newer. I don't dislike them. I just don't make as much of a point to go watch them. That's all. I just so definitely the first one, but a lot of that comes to personal preference. I do love as I said earlier, some Jessica Lange in the 1970s version. So,
and which that one also huge. Now, what I want to do real quick, we've talked about your first horror movie. We've talked about some of your horror movies that have really meant a lot to you. But now, Emma, I do want to kind of throw you a little bit of a curveball here for a second. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Emma? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
So I'm the worst person to ask that question, because I'm like, I don't have favorites. I don't do rankings. But there was a movie I did want to. It's one of my favorite scary movies. It's not necessarily a scary movie, but it's a movie that affected me, and probably I wouldn't be as big of a horror fan if it wasn't for this movie. It's been co-opted a little bit, which some movies can be, and I love other people finding their own meaning in it, even if those people can be a little bit much sometimes. But I'm going to take you back, okay? I'm taking you back.
I'm in.
It's the year 2000, right?
Okay.
And, VHS went out of mass production in 2006, with Cronenberg's History of Violence being the last one. Unrelated. I'm going into, we don't have a Blockbuster where I grew up. We had a small video store called Video Junction. I had been watching all of the slashers. I had been watching Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, what was out then for Scream, which was quite a bit, like 1 through 3, and all of the traditional slashers. And so I'm looking to watch them all. And I pick up this one movie thinking it's another slasher, like a teen slasher or teen slasher adjacent, called American Psycho, that I rented on VHS. I had heard nothing about it. I didn't have a personal computer at the time. I couldn't look it up. But I'm trying to watch everything, and I put it in, and it was so different than what I expected or anything else that I had ever seen before in my life. It was so serious in the beginning. I'm like, why are all these people talking so much? I'm 12, 13. There's a lot of people talk. I was obsessed with it, and I'm still obsessed with American Psycho. I love that it's written by women, by director Mary Harron and Guinevere Turner, and Guinevere Turner is a woman who loves women. And I love that Bret Easton Ellis has said women can't direct movies after that movie came out. And I read the book too. It's a good, as much as Bret Easton Ellis can be a very annoying human being, I will give him, it is a good book. And that movie sense of humor is really what gets me, is that it
Yeah.
has this really odd, a sense of humor that I had never seen before. And part of the reason Christian Bale was cast for that part, I found out later, because I didn't, because my only option to see what other people thought was on the of American Psycho would be my school computer, and that wasn't super accessible at the time to
Sure.
look up like on personal stuff. So it felt like, I believe it or not, as popular as now, it felt like My Little Movie. I think we all experienced that, where we have a movie like we think we're like, this is my little movie that I discovered, and it's like for me, it was American Psycho, and Christian Bale understood the humor, and that's why he was cast. And I think it's extra funny that his stepmother at the time was the woman Gloria Steinem, who tried to get the book not to be published. I think it's just a coincidence. I don't think there's any. What a coincidence, though.
Yeah, what a twist.
Nah.
And it's funny because American Psycho is one of those movies where, like, it came out and it was a little bit of a hit. Like, it wasn't a huge hit when it came out, and then it just gained this cult following. Like, the marketing on, I feel a lot like that, like I do with Jennifer's Body. The marketing on that movie
Same.
ruined that movie. And if you could have had a better marketing, the same way they did with Halloween 3 and Halloween Ends, and all these movies that have, they don't understand how important marketing is to making your film successful. And that's part of the reason. But then after a while, people start forgetting about what the marketing was. They go back and actually watch the film, like, well, damn, this is fucking awesome.
I don't even remember the marketing. What was the marketing for the movie?
American Psycho was marketed as a straight up thriller slasher film. And they didn't explore any of the comedy elements in the trailer. You're getting very little bit of any type of background on who he is or what he is. It's just a crazy demented slasher in his underwear with an axe, essentially.
So the chainsaw underwear scene is prevalent in the trailer, in the early trailers. Okay, yeah.
And then you got him with him with a raincoat. Like, it's just, they didn't.
It's so funny. It's so funny. I love it. It's hilarious. Right. And it's hilarious how, even though I do have, so I say this with a caveat, like some moments I relate to Patrick Bateman, not many though. Right. But I love how pathetic he is. It's like, he's so pathetic, and he knows he's pathetic. And one of the things that is in the book that I think I understand why it's not in the movie for time, I assume, that it's just an extra little dig at Patrick Bateman. I don't know how much you've read Bret Easton Ellis books. Do you know Rules of Attraction? Well, Rules of Attraction is about Sean Bateman, who's Patrick's brother, who is not a killer in any sense, but, he's into himself. But there's a scene in the book, or a portion of the book, where Sean Bateman calls up Patrick and he's like, yeah, I got it. Like, it was no problem for him to get into Dorsia, like no problem at all. And Patrick hates it. And I love when Patrick's miserable. But I think one of the only times I relate to Patrick Bateman is when he's putting a body in the back of a car, and the guy that's in love with him, Lewis, is like, Patrick, is that you? No, Lewis, it is not me. You are mistaken. And Chris, I've watched that movie so many times that I noticed, because every movie has little tiny mistakes. So this is not me. Like, I don't usually like to point mistakes out in movies. It just shows how many times I've seen this movie. So, and he's freaking out on the phone and talking to his lawyer. And the line is, I've killed so many girls. You could hear his accent on the word girls. I've killed so many girls. So next time you watch it, look for that. So, I mean, I get made fun of sometimes because it's been like film bro, or, like college ships, like co-opted a little bit, but I love it so much. I take so much away from it. I feel like it's a horror movie written primarily by women. Not that I'm taking away from what Bret Easton Ellis has done. I'm not erasing that, but so it's one of those movies that really changed what kind of movies I was looking for. And so I have a question for you. Can I ask you another question, even though I just talked a lot? So since you were growing up in a film rental place, did you get to watch those like really cryptically marked SOV flicks that would be like sometimes mistakenly put in the porn section or in the horror section? Or
it depends. Like, I remember we got like Faces of Death one time, and like my parents were freaking out that they even got it in the store, and stuff like that. But we were such a small mom and pop shop. Like
That's
we
so
were half,
cute.
yeah, we were like half a video store, and then the other half was like a baseball card comic book shop. Like we were just like this little, and then they had like silver and gold exchange there. So I mean, like we didn't get like a lot of what of these bigger places got. Like we had maybe, you know, 10 rows of films, and you had like the new releases on the outside wall, and then we had like 10 rows of film. Like it wasn't huge video store. So I can't say I got a lot of those, but I remember getting Faces of Death and my parents freaking out, like, no, this isn't, this is real. Like to them, like, this is real. I'm like, Mom, this is real. You're not watching it. Okay, whatever. Because my thing was like, we had a VHS rewinder at the store, and my job was when people would return their tapes, I had to put the VHS in the rewind. It wasn't even a VCR; it was just a VHS rewinder. I rewind the tapes, and if I did that, I got to take home a Nintendo cartridge and one movie at the end of the week every week. So
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. Oh
yeah,
my God. That's
it was
so
pretty
cute.
rad.
That is really rad. That is
Yeah.
cool. So you guys rented games too, a little
Oh
bit?
yeah, Nintendo. Once a little bit of Sega, but I was always just a Nintendo kid. So I can't tell you how many times I rented Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, just to try to figure that game out. That game was a pain in my ass, man. Who knew you were supposed to kneel with a red crystal to make a tornado? That's stupid. But I can talk about that all day. But I got to return some videotapes.
I love how you have the feeling still. You're like, how are you? How?
I was
The
supposed to be a
emotion's
kid
still
like
there.
me back in 1989. How the hell? I didn't have the internet. I didn't know that you had to have a red crystal and go kneel by the wall at the wastelands for 5 seconds. Then a tornado would come and take you to the next part. Like I remember when I found that out, I was so mad. Like I wanted to find every person that made that game and punch them in the dick. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like it still haunts my memories. Like it really does.
That's the kinder trauma.
There you go, Simon's Quest. So I've had a genuine amazing time talking to you about all things horror and what these horror movies mean to you. But before I let you go, what I want to do is I want to bounce back to King Kong. And what I want to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, Emma, we're not ranking King Kong on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. What we're doing is strictly ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Emma, what would your ranking of King Kong be?
3.25.
Fair, very fair. And like I said, there's others that have affected you more. There's others you like more, but without that first King Kong viewing, we may not have the Emma sitting in front of us that we do right now. So I said it at the beginning, guys, and I'm going to say it again now because we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, there are some social media links and some podcast links down in the description that really need your attention. So please make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Please make sure you're following Emma so you can stay up to date on everything that she has coming up in the future. Emma, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media so you can stay up to date on everything we're doing as well. And until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.